The room was cold and filled with a soft humming sound. White lights glowed above, washing everything in a pale, almost lifeless color. Inside a transparent glass cell sat a small boy, maybe 12 years old. His hair was messy, his clothes torn, but his eyes were calm. He looked around the strange alien laboratory with quiet focus. They called him the human cub. Around the cell, tall figures in dark armor moved like shadows. Their skin was gray-blue, their eyes bright like burning coals. They were the Kareth, one of the oldest warrior races in the galaxy, and the human child was their prisoner. At the front of the room stood Commander Threx. His armor was black, with deep silver marks of rank. He had fought in the Great Human War, the war that burned 1,000 worlds. To him, humans were monsters wearing soft skins, creatures that smiled while they conquered. Threx stepped closer to the cell, his heavy boots echoing against the metal floor. He studied the boy through the glass. "So," Threx said slowly, his voice rough like sand, "this is the famous human courage?" Small, fragile, weak. The boy said nothing. He just looked up, straight into Threx's glowing eyes. That simple act, a child staring without fear, made something strange move inside the alien commander's chest. He didn't understand why. One of the scientists, a thin alien with many arms, turned to Threx. "Commander, we are ready to begin the mental tests." Threx nodded. "Do it. I want to see how long this cub can last." The room darkened. Machines started to hum louder. Wires connected to the boy's chair, reading every signal from his body. His heartbeat, his thoughts, his pain. The first test began. Fear simulation. Images flashed inside the boy's mind. Dark shapes, roaring sounds, endless voids. Most beings screamed after seconds, but the boy didn't scream. He sat still, breathing slow and steady. Minutes passed. The scientist frowned. Strange. His stress level is low. He resists the illusion. Threx crossed his arms. Increase the intensity. The machine's light turned red. The boy's face twisted, but only for a moment. Then he whispered softly, "This isn't real." Threx leaned closer. "What did he say?" "He knows," the scientist said in disbelief. "He knows it's not real." The simulation ended. The boy opened his eyes. Sweat covered his face, but he was still calm. Threx stepped forward. "You do not fear us, human?" The boy's voice was quiet but firm. "I do, but I don't show it to people who enjoy it." A low growl came from Threx's throat. The child spoke like a soldier, not a prisoner. The second test began. Pain response. Electric impulses ran through the chair, sharp enough to make even adult warriors faint. The boy gritted his teeth, his small fists shaking, but he never cried out. When it was over, the scientists exchanged nervous looks. "His pain resistance. It's impossible." He should have collapsed. Threx's red eyes narrowed. Maybe humans are too stubborn to die. Later, when the other aliens left the lab, Threx stayed behind. The glass cell glowed faintly in the dark. Inside, the boy sat curled up, awake. Threx spoke through the intercom. "Why don't you scream, cub? Most of your kind beg for mercy." The boy lifted his head. "Because screaming doesn't help." Threx paused. The words were simple but heavy. "What helps then?" "Enduring," the boy said, "waiting for the pain to end." "It always ends." Threx didn't reply. For the first time in many cycles, he felt unsure. He had seen humans fight with fire and fury. But this quiet strength was something else. As he turned to leave, he looked once more at the small figure inside the glass. The boy had closed his eyes, trying to rest. Even in sleep, his face looked peaceful. Threx muttered to himself, strange creature, so small, yet unbroken. The next day, the Higher Council sent a message to Threx. The human child was part of a secret experiment. The goal to break the human mind, to prove that even their courage had limits. Threx accepted the order. He had no reason to care. Humans had burned his world, killed his people. Breaking one more meant nothing. But that night he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that boy staring at him, not with hate, not with fear, but with something else, pity. The thought made Threx furious. How could a human cub pity him? He returned to the lab before dawn. The boy was awake, drawing something on the metal floor with a small stone. Circles, lines, dots. "What is that?" Threx demanded. The boy looked up. "It's Earth," he said simply. "My home." Threx stared. He didn't understand why the child would remember such a thing after all the pain. "You think you'll go back?" The boy nodded. "One day," Threx gave a cold laugh. "No one escapes from the Kareth," the boy smiled faintly. "Then I'll be the first." For a long moment they looked at each other, alien and human, enemy and prisoner. And in that silence, something unseen shifted between them. Threx turned away quickly, hiding the small tremor in his claws. He wanted to destroy the human cub's spirit, but somehow it felt like the cub was breaking him instead. The next morning, the lab was colder than before. The metal walls shone like mirrors, reflecting the boy's small figure trapped behind glass. The machines around him blinked with silent lights, waiting for new commands. Commander Threx entered with heavy steps. The other Kareth soldiers moved aside as he passed. Everyone could feel his anger, but also something else. Confusion, the scientists bowed. "Commander, the human subject is ready for the next round of tests." Threx nodded slowly. "Begin. Let's see if his courage still holds." They started with a new experiment, one meant to crush the mind, not the body. It was called the isolation sequence. No sound, no light, no sense of time. Even the strongest warriors went mad after a few hours. Inside the dark cell, the boy sat quietly. For a long while he didn't move. No one could tell if he was awake or asleep. The machines read his brainwaves. Steady, calm, impossible, the scientist whispered. "He should be screaming by now." Threx frowned. "Open the visual feed." The screen showed the boy sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, lips moving silently. He was whispering something. Threx leaned closer. "What is he saying?" The sound sensors amplified the voice. He was saying words, soft, broken, but not in pain. He was singing a human lullaby. Even through the cold speakers, the simple tune felt warm. For a second, the whole lab grew quiet. Threx clenched his fists. "Stop the test." The lights came back on. The boy opened his eyes slowly. He looked tired, but not defeated. Threx stepped closer to the glass. "You sing, when you are alone in the dark." The boy shrugged lightly. "My mother used to sing that song. It helps me remember." Threx stared at him for a long time. "Remember what?" "Who I am," the boy said. The commander turned away. He didn't want the others to see the strange look in his eyes. Later, when the other scientists left to report their data, Threx stayed behind again. He stood near the cell, silent. The boy was drawing something new, lines and shapes that looked like stars. Threx finally asked, "Why do you draw these things? You know you'll never see your world again." The boy didn't stop drawing. "Maybe not. But I can still remember it." "You can't take memories away," Threx grunted. "Memories are useless in war." The boy looked up at him. "Then maybe war is useless too." The words hit Threx like a blade. No one, not even other Kareth officers, had ever spoken to him like that. For a second he almost admired the courage. "Do all humans talk this much?" Threx asked. "Only the ones who are scared," the boy said, smiling slightly. That made Threx pause. "So you admit you're afraid?" "Yes," the boy said. "But being afraid doesn't mean giving up." Threx had no answer. He had spent his whole life believing fear was weakness. Yet this small creature spoke as if fear was strength. He walked closer to the glass and lowered his voice. "What are you made of, cub? Metal?" The boy smiled faintly again. "No, just hope." Threx stepped back slowly. Something deep inside him shifted, like a locked door opening just a little. Days passed. The scientists continued their tests, each one harsher than the last. They tried chemicals that clouded the mind, illusions that twisted the senses, lights that burned the eyes. But the boy endured everything. He cried sometimes, yes, but quietly. He never begged. He never said stop, and every time he recovered he went back to drawing, earth, stars, ships, people. Threx started to visit more often. He told himself it was part of his duty, to study the subject's behavior. But deep down he knew it wasn't true. He was curious. One night Threx brought food himself instead of sending a guard. The boy looked surprised. "You brought this?" Threx grunted. "You need strength to survive the next tests." The boy smiled weakly. "You sound like you care." Threx frowned. "I don't. I just need results." But as he turned to leave, the boy said softly, "Thank you." The word made Threx stop in his tracks. No one had thanked him in years, not even his own kind. He didn't reply, just walked out. But that night, sleep didn't come easily. A week later, Threx entered the lab and found the boy sitting on the floor, staring at his reflection in the glass. "Why do you keep looking at yourself?" Threx asked. The boy turned. "To make sure I still know who I am." Threx tilted his head. "And who are you, cub?" The boy smiled a little. "Just human," Threx said quietly. "Maybe that's the problem." "Or maybe," the boy replied, "that's the answer." Silence filled the room. The commander looked at the small human, and for the first time in his long military life he didn't see an enemy. He saw something else. Something he couldn't name. He turned away, his voice lower than before. "You confuse me, cub." The boy's reply came softly. "Maybe that's good." Later that night, Threx stood alone on the observation deck of the station, looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched before him, endless, cold, silent. He thought about all the planets humans had burned, and all the songs they still sang. He thought about the boy, the small human who refused to break, and for the first time, Threx wondered if maybe, just maybe, humanity's strength wasn't in their weapons or wars, but in their will to endure. He clenched his claws and whispered to the stars, "What are you trying to teach me, little cub?" Far below, inside the lab, the boy drew another circle, Earth, and above it one small dot, a ship, a hope, a promise. The laboratory was quiet again. The glass cell stood empty for the first time in weeks. Commander Threx didn't like it. He kept staring at the monitors, waiting for the human boy to appear. The scientists worked in silence, their long fingers moving quickly across the glowing control panels. A thick mist floated in the air, and the smell of chemicals hung heavy. Threx's eyes burned red as he turned toward the chief scientist. "Where is the subject?" "In the preparation room, Commander," the alien replied. "The High Council has approved the final stage." Threx's claws tightened around the edge of the table. "Final stage?" The scientist nodded eagerly. "Yes, we are ready to erase the humans' memories. Once we remove emotion and identity, we will know if their courage is born from mind or heart." The words felt like a blade twisting inside Threx's chest. He didn't understand why, but the thought of that boy, quiet, brave, stubborn, being turned into an empty shell made something inside him grow cold. He looked at the scientist again. "And if he dies?" The scientist gave a thin smile. "Then the experiment will still be a success." "Data is data," Threx said nothing, but his silence was heavy. In the preparation chamber, the boy sat in a metal chair. Wires ran across his head, glowing softly. His hands were tied, but his eyes were calm as always. When Threx entered, the boy looked up. "Another test?" Threx stopped in front of him. "This one is different." The boy tilted his head. "Will it hurt?" Threx hesitated. "Yes," the boy gave a small nod. "Then I'll be ready." That answer hit Threx harder than any weapon ever could. He stared at the child, so small yet so strong, and felt his chest tighten. "You don't understand," Threx said slowly. "They want to take everything from you. Your memories, your name, who you are. When it's over, you will be nothing." The boy met his eyes. "If I remember one thing before that happens, I'll remember that I was human." Threx turned away. He couldn't look at him anymore. The scientist entered with a data pad. "Commander, we are ready. Please step aside." Threx watched as they placed a shining silver helmet over the boy's head. The lights on the machine pulsed faster. The hum grew louder. The boy winced as the first wave of energy hit him. His body shook. "Begin the memory drain," the scientist ordered. The monitor flashed with human images, a woman smiling, a blue sky, a small dog running. Each memory flickered, then faded to black. Threx's claws dug into his palms. "Stop," he said suddenly. The scientist turned. "Commander." "I said stop." The scientist looked confused. "We can't. The process has started." Threx moved forward, pushing the smaller alien aside. "Then I'll end it myself." He slammed his claw onto the emergency control, ripping the power line from the machine. Sparks flew. The lights exploded. The boy gasped once and fell silent. Smoke filled the room. When the air cleared, the boy was still. The scientist hissed angrily. "You killed the subject. Do you know what you've done?" Threx stared at the small body. He didn't answer. The scientist shouted, "Commander Threx, you will face the council for this failure." But Threx didn't move. He waited until everyone left the room to prepare their reports. Only then did he kneel beside the chair. He touched the boy's wrist. "There will be a faint pulse alive. Threx's breath caught. He quickly unstrapped the wires and lifted the boy into his arms. "You stubborn little creature," he whispered. "You survived." The boy's eyes opened slightly. His voice was weak, but the same calm tone remained. "Told you. It always ends." Threx almost smiled. "Yes, it ends now." He moved through the dark halls, carrying the boy wrapped in a silver thermal sheet. The station's alarms hadn't triggered yet. The council still thought the experiment was complete. Threx reached the cargo bay, a wide room filled with metal crates and small ships. He laid the boy gently on the floor. "Stay quiet," he said. "I'm taking you home." The boy blinked slowly. "Why?" Threx hesitated. "Because I've done enough destroying. Maybe it's time to protect something instead." The boy nodded weakly. "You're different, Commander." "Don't call me that," Threx said. "Just Threx." The boy smiled faintly. "Thank you, Threx." He found an old cargo shuttle in the corner, one rarely used. He began to prepare it for launch, entering secret override codes only high-ranking officers knew. As the engines hummed, a red light suddenly flashed above them. "Alert! Unauthorized activity detected in Bay 7. Threx cursed under his breath. "They know." He grabbed a weapon from the wall and turned to the boy. "Hide behind the crates. Don't move until I say." The boy nodded and crawled behind the metal containers. Footsteps echoed in the hall, and loud, heavy, fast. The door slid open, and a group of armed soldiers entered. Their leader stepped forward, tall, covered in golden armor. His eyes glowed brighter than fire. It was Overseer Malin, Threx's superior. "Commander Threx," Malin said, his voice calm and cruel. "You've gone too far." Threx didn't move. "He's just a child." Malin's mouth curved into a cold smile. "He's not a child. He's an experiment. And you've broken the law of the Kareth. You will pay for this treachery." Threx raised his weapon. "Then come and take him." Malin's eyes narrowed. "You would fight your own kind for a human?" Threx's claws tightened on the trigger. "Not for a human, for what he represents." Malin tilted his head. "And what is that?" Threx answered quietly. "Hope." The soldiers raised their guns, the air grew still, and as the first shot fired, Threx roared, not as a commander of war, but as a guardian of something greater. Blaster fire burned across the cargo bay. Sparks exploded as metal beams shattered and alarms screamed through the station. The smell of smoke and ozone filled the air. Commander Threx ducked behind a crate, firing back at the soldiers pouring into the room. His armor glowed red under the flashing lights. The boy stayed hidden behind a pile of boxes, just as Threx had ordered. But even through the noise, he could see the commander, standing tall, fighting against his own kind. Every blast echoed like thunder. Overseer Malin's voice cut through the chaos. "Threx, you can't win." "There's nowhere to run." Threx's breathing was heavy. "Maybe not. But I only need one chance." He threw a plasma grenade toward the door. It exploded in a storm of light, throwing 2 soldiers back into the hall. Smoke filled the bay. Threx ran to the boy, kneeling beside him. "Are you hurt?" The boy shook his head. "No, but you're bleeding." Threx looked down. A wound burned across his side, glowing faintly. He ignored it. "We have to move." He helped the boy to his feet. Together they ran through the maze of cargo crates. The boy moved fast, small enough to squeeze through gaps the soldiers couldn't follow. As they reached the far end of the bay, Threx opened a side door leading into the maintenance tunnels. The air was thick and hot, filled with the sound of machinery. "This way," Threx said. "The tunnels lead to the launch bay." The boy hesitated. "What if they find us?" Threx gave a grim smile. "Then we make them wish they didn't." They ran through the tunnels, footsteps echoing, metal walls glowing red from the station's emergency lights. The boy stumbled once, but Threx caught him easily. For a moment the commander looked down at him, this small, fragile being he was risking everything for, and felt something new. Not anger, not duty, purpose. Behind them voices shouted. The soldiers were closing in. Threx stopped at a control panel and ripped off the cover. His claws danced over the wires, rerouting power. "Hold on," he said. He pressed a button. A door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the soldiers. The boy looked at him with wide eyes. "You trapped them." Threx smirked. "For now. Don't thank me yet." They continued running until they reached a circular hatch marked Launch Bay Access. Threx entered a code and the door hissed open. The room beyond was vast, filled with ships of all sizes. The stars shone through the open docking field like tiny diamonds. The boy gasped softly. "We made it?" Threx placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not yet. Once we're in space, they'll send hunters." He guided the boy toward a small shuttle, an old one rusted and forgotten in the corner. "This ship," Threx said, "is slow, but it has stealth systems. It can hide from their scanners." The boy climbed inside, looking around the narrow cockpit. "You sure this will fly?" Threx gave a low laugh. "It will. I built it myself." He started the engines. The shuttle shook, then settled into a soft hum. The lights flickered to life. For a brief second, it felt like they might actually escape. Then, the door at the far end of the hangar opened, and Overseer Marlin stepped through. Flanked by a dozen soldiers, his golden armor glowed in the dim light. "You never learn, Threx," he said. "You can't run from your own people." Threx turned slowly, his weapon ready. "I'm not running. I'm protecting," Marlin laughed. "Protecting that thing." He pointed at the boy. "He's the reason our worlds burn." The boy looked at the floor, but Threx stepped in front of him. "He's just a child. He did nothing." Malin's eyes burned. "You've gone soft." Threx's grip on his blaster tightened. "No, I finally understand strength." Malin raised his hand. "Kill them both." The hangar filled with fire. Threx moved fast, and faster than anyone expected. His blaster flashed, hitting the first two soldiers before they could react. He rolled behind a crate, returning fire. The boy ducked down, covering his head. "Stay low!" Threx shouted. A plasma shot grazed his shoulder. He grunted in pain but kept fighting. Each move was precise, powerful, the skill of a veteran warrior who had nothing left to lose. When a soldier got too close, Threx swung his arm, striking him across the helmet. The alien fell hard, motionless. The boy peeked up. "Threx, go!" Threx roared. "Get inside the shuttle!" The boy hesitated. "Not without you. Do it." Threx's voice was sharp, but underneath there was something else. Fear, not for himself, for the boy. The boy ran to the shuttle, climbing into the cockpit. He looked back and saw Threx still fighting, outnumbered, wounded, but unstoppable. Threx grabbed a fallen soldier's blaster and fired both guns at once, covering the shuttle's ramp. Then he shouted, "Now, human! Launch it!" The boy's hands trembled as he pressed the ignition. The engines roared. Marlin yelled, "Stop that ship!" Threx turned toward the Overseer one last time. Their eyes met. "Fire and steel," Marlin sneered. "You think saving one human will change anything?" Threx smiled faintly. "No, but it changes me." With that, he slammed his fist onto the emergency release. The shuttle shot out of the hangar into the black sea of stars. Marlin screamed orders, but it was too late. The shuttle disappeared into hyperspace, leaving only silence behind. Threx stood alone, surrounded by fallen soldiers, smoke rising around him. He was bleeding, his armor cracked, but his eyes were calm. For the first time in his life, Commander Threx wasn't a weapon. He was a guardian. The shuttle shot through the stars, leaving the burning station behind. Inside, the boy gripped the controls tightly, his small hands sweating. His heart pounded in his chest, but his eyes were sharp. Threx had stayed behind. The boy turned in the cockpit. "Threx, you're not coming!" Threx's voice came through the comm, rough and strained. "Go, save yourself." "That's an order." The boy shook his head. "No, I won't leave you." Threx's jaw clenched. "Humans, you never understand sacrifice." Outside the shuttle, the black void of space stretched endlessly. In the distance, the remnants of the station glowed red, smoke drifting from the wreckage. Inside the station, Commander Threx moved like a storm. His armor was cracked and scorched, one shoulder hanging loose. But his claws gripped his weapon as if it were an extension of his own body. Overseer Marlin and his soldiers poured into the docking bay. "Threx," Malin roared, "you will die for your crimes." Threx didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weapon spoke for him. Blaster fire filled the bay. Sparks flew as Threx rolled behind crates and slabs of metal, returning fire with deadly precision. The soldiers fell one by one, but more kept coming. Marlin advanced, golden armor gleaming. "You fight for nothing. You fight for a child." Threx stepped forward, his weapon raised. "Not a child, a symbol of what you refuse to see." Malin sneered. "And what is that?" Threx's voice was low, almost a growl. "Hope." The fight became a storm of motion. Threx leaped over crates, striking soldiers down with precise blows. Plasma bolts whizzed past his head. Sparks erupted from metal walls. Each shot, each strike was not just for survival. It was to protect the boy. Meanwhile, the shuttle trembled as the boy guided it through the stars. I can't outrun them forever, he muttered. Then you don't, Threx's voice came again. Distract them. I'll create the opening. The boy's eyes widened. How? Just listen, Threx snapped. Do exactly what I say. The boy nodded, gripping the controls. He activated the shuttle's stealth field and small countermeasures. Missiles fired from the station, but the shuttle twisted and vanished from the enemy sensors. Inside the station, Threx took the fight to the heart of the attackers. He moved like a shadow, silent but deadly. His claws struck with surgical precision. Every strike had one goal: delay the enemy long enough for the boy to escape. Malen cornered him at the edge of the launch bay. This ends now, Threx. Threx's breathing was heavy, his armor scorched, but his eyes were calm. It ends when the boy survives, Marlin's eyes blazed. You defend the species that destroyed your world. Threx's claws tightened. They may have fire, but this cub has heart. The two clashed. Sparks flew as claws met armor. Threx fought not for glory, not for revenge, but for something he had never understood until now. Loyalty, courage, and the protection of the innocent. Back on the shuttle, the boy watched the docking bay grow smaller. He could feel Threx's presence through the comm. I'm almost clear! Go, don't look back, Threx shouted. The boy pressed the ignition for hyperspace. The shuttle shook, engines roaring. Stars streaked into lines as the jump began. Threx took one last look at the boy disappearing into the black of space. His chest burned, his wounds screamed in pain, but he smiled faintly. Go, he whispered. Be the hope I never was. The explosion of the station lit the void, casting Threx's silhouette against the flames. His figure was small against the collapse, but unbroken. As the shuttle sped away, the boy looked back through the viewport. His eyes glistened. Threx, he called. A faint figure appeared in the explosion's glow. A clawed hand raised in farewell. The boy swallowed hard. He stayed behind. Yes, the comm crackled one last time. Guardians sometimes. Stay behind. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes, but he smiled through them. He knew the truth. The human cub would survive because someone believed in him. Not just anyone, but an alien commander who had chosen to protect him when no one else would. The stars rushed past as the boy piloted the shuttle towards safety. The stars stretched endlessly before him, bright and cold. The shuttle hummed softly, carrying the boy, as now grown, across the galaxy. His hands, once small and trembling, gripped the controls with steady precision. His eyes, dark and clear, reflected the light of distant suns. He was no longer a child. He was a pilot, a protector, a guardian. Yet in his heart one memory remained alive. Sharp as a blade, Threx, the alien commander who had risked everything to save him. Decades had passed since that night of fire and sacrifice. The war that had once consumed the galaxy had ended, leaving scars on countless worlds. Humanity had survived, grown stronger, and expanded into the stars. But the boy, the human cub, had never forgotten the lesson he had learned on that burning station. He remembered the silence, the calm courage, and the strange bond between predator and protector. He remembered how a warrior who hated humans chose to shield him instead of destroying him, and he knew that his life, everything he had become, existed because someone else had believed in hope. The shuttle approached a quiet station, orbiting a blue-green planet. The human pilot docked smoothly, the engines fading to silence. He stepped out into the open platform, breathing deeply. Around him, other humans and alien travelers moved, busy with their own lives, unaware of the quiet hero who had shaped the galaxy's future. He walked to a memorial hall, a small building filled with monuments to heroes long gone. Statues of soldiers, commanders, and civilians decorated the room, but in the center was a small, strange carving, an alien claw and a human hand joined together, etched into a pedestal. He knelt before it. His hand rested lightly on the carved claws. "You saved me," he whispered. "You gave me a chance." A soft breeze carried his words through the hall. The memory of the explosion, the fire, and the small shuttle rushing into the stars played vividly in his mind. He closed his eyes. "You became my guardian, even when I thought no one could protect me. As he opened his eyes, he thought about everything he had become: a pilot, a protector, a soldier who fought for the innocent. He had learned that courage was not about strength alone, but about choice. Threx had chosen to protect, and that choice had changed the course of history. The man walked to the edge of the station and looked at the stars. He could feel the pull of distant systems, of worlds that still needed guardians. He tightened his hands on the railing. Some fight to destroy, he murmured. Some fight to protect. I choose the latter, always. A small smile crossed his face. The stars reflected in his eyes, bright like the hope he had carried since he was a child. Far away, in a forgotten corner of space, a faint signal blinked once, then vanished. No one could see it. No one but the one who remembered. It was a whisper of a promise, a legacy of courage, a guardian's vow. And somewhere in the endless dark, a figure, small in the galaxy but enormous in spirit, lived on. Not in body, but in choice, in hope, in the will to endure. The boy, now a man, looked out at the universe again. He thought of Threx, and of the lessons learned in fire and fear. Sometimes, he thought, the strongest warriors were not those who destroyed worlds, but those who protected them. Sometimes, the smallest beings carried the largest hearts, and sometimes, the galaxy remembered the heroes no one expected. Aliens and humans, bound together by courage and hope. He straightened, taking a deep breath. The stars awaited. The galaxy needed a guardian, and he would not fail.